Somewhere in a river valley 30,000 years ago, a man is about to do something that should get him killed. He has walked for 2 days through land that isn't his. If anyone from the group ahead decides he's a threat instead of a guest, there will be no trial, no warning, no second chance. Just spears and a body left for the group he came from to eventually stop looking for. He knows this. He is walking toward it anyway, not for food, not for territory, not for anything a modern person would call urgent enough to risk their life over. He is walking toward a woman he has seen only once, from a distance, or weeks earlier, and something in him has decided she is worth dying for the chance to see again. This is not a myth, and it is not exaggerated for effect. Anthropologists studying early human territorial behavior have documented exactly this dynamic in small-scale societies. A stranger crossing into another group's land, for any reason, romantic ones included, could be treated as a threat first and a guest second, if he was treated as a guest at all, which means the very first date in human history, in the most literal sense that survives in the record, may have doubled as one of the most dangerous decisions a human being could make, and it is only the beginning of how strange this story gets. In 1977, researchers in northern China recovered fragments of a human skull roughly 100,000 years old. Something about it was wrong. A hole where there shouldn't have been one. A congenital deformity, the kind that researchers believe rarely appears by chance. It appears when a population stops reaching outward, when the same small group keeps pairing with itself, generation after generation, until the same rare, damaging mutations start meeting each other more often than they ever should. Most people assume romance is a modern invention, candlelight, restaurants, carefully worded messages sent back and forth before anyone commits to meeting. That assumption collapses completely once you look at what early humans were actually risking to do the exact same thing, tens of thousands of years earlier, with no language, no safety net, and no way to call it off partway through. In small early human groups, meeting someone from outside your own band wasn't a coincidence. It was often the entire point. Marrying within your own small group, generation after generation, created a biological dead end. Genetic research on ancient populations has shown that groups who paired too closely, too often, simply didn't survive as well over the long run. So somewhere deep in inherited behavior, humans developed an instinct to seek out strangers specifically, to travel toward unfamiliar faces instead of retreating from them, even when every rational signal said to stay home. That instinct still lives in you today. It's the same flicker of interest you feel toward someone new, someone unfamiliar, someone from outside your usual circle. You experience it as attraction. Your ancestors experienced it as a calculated risk against their own survival. When he finally arrived, the meeting itself did not happen the way you're picturing it. Anthropologists studying small-scale societies have documented something that undercuts almost every modern assumption about early courtship. It rarely happened alone. A first meeting between potential partners was almost always witnessed by siblings, by cousins, by the wider group standing at a careful distance, watching without appearing to watch. This wasn't suspicion, it was insurance. In a world with no written contracts, no legal system, no way to verify a stranger's intentions beyond what your own eyes could confirm, a witnessed meeting was the only proof that would ever exist that things had happened honorably. Which means the moment you're picturing, two people alone, saying nothing, sizing each other up in total privacy, never actually happened the way you imagined it. Someone was always watching. Someone was always ready to intervene. The gift came before the words, and it wasn't a gesture. It was evidence. Across numerous early and small-scale societies, courtship didn't begin with conversation. It began with an object, food, a tool, a decorated shell, something carried specifically for this moment, and given without asking for anything in return. The gift wasn't affection, it was a demonstration of capability. A man who could travel 2 days through hostile, unfamiliar territory, hunt successfully along the way, and still arrive with something to offer, was making an argument with his hands that no words could make faster. I am someone who provides. I am someone who returns, even when the odds say I shouldn't. Researchers studying hunter-gatherer courtship rituals still observe this same pattern today in some of the last remaining small-scale societies on Earth. Gift-giving that functions less like a compliment and more like proof, presented before trust has been earned any other way. The modern instinct to bring flowers, to buy dinner, to arrive holding something is not simple etiquette. It is an inherited performance, thousands of generations deep, of exactly the same argument. I can provide, and I am choosing to prove it to you first, before you owe me anything at all. Language, when it existed between two different groups at all was often nearly useless. Early human bands frequently spoke different dialects, sometimes entirely different languages, separated by distance and isolation for generations. So courtship had to happen through something older than words, something neither of them had to be taught. Anthropologists point to the same tools appearing again and again across separate, unconnected cultures. Sustained eye contact, held a beat longer than necessary. Mirrored body posture, the deliberate slowing of movement to signal I am not a threat. A shared laugh at something that required no translation at all. These are not primitive substitutes for real communication. They are the original communication. The biological software still running underneath every language ever invented since. Still active in every uncomfortable silence, every nervous laugh, every lingering glance you've experienced on an actual modern date. You didn't invent the awkward silence before someone speaks first. You inherited it, fully formed from people who had no other option. There is something else beneath this entire ritual that most people never stop to consider. The meeting itself could still fail catastrophically, even after everything had gone right so far. Meeting a stranger from an unfamiliar group 30,000 years ago was not emotionally risky in the way a modern date is emotionally risky. It was physically risky the entire way through. Neighboring groups were sometimes allies. They were sometimes not. A miscalculated approach, a misread signal, a movement interpreted as aggression instead of interest could end the meeting in violence rather than romance, with no warning and no second chance. Which means every early human who ever approached a stranger from another group was making a calculated bet with their own life that this particular person and the group standing behind them was worth the risk of finding out. That is the actual origin of the nervous energy you feel before meeting someone new. It is not simply social anxiety. It is a preserved ancient alarm system, still faithfully running a threat calculation your body no longer needs for a danger that mostly no longer exists, but that your nervous system has never been told is over. Once trust was established, through witnesses, through gifts, through gesture instead of language, the relationship still wasn't private the way modern relationships are treated today. It became, almost immediately, a negotiation between entire groups, whether either person wanted it to or not. In other words, the earliest first dates in human history were never really about two individuals at all. They were the opening move in a much larger negotiation between two survival networks, disguised as the simple act of two people getting to know each other by a river in a clearing, at the edge of land neither of them fully controlled.